Welcome back to Good Girls Gotta Heal, the podcast where we learn to release the weight of childhood trauma and step into our most authentic selves. It's time to ditch that good girl mask and embrace a life of ease, compassion, and genuine connection. Join me, Megan Walsh, holistic trauma therapist, and let's embark on a journey of healing and self-discovery together. Let's dive in. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to a new episode of Good Girls Gotta Heal. Today, I am so excited to be joined by Debbie Massoud. Debbie is a licensed psychotherapist, consultant, and founder of the Manhattan Psychotherapy Collective, which is a group practice in New York City specializing in trauma-informed care for women. Beyond the therapy room, she's a mental health educator on social media, known as @TherapyDebbie, and the author of the newly published book, Self-Directed Complex PTSD Exercises for Women. Welcome, Debbie.
Hi, Megan. Thank you so much for having me. I'm so happy to be here.
So thrilled to have you here. So excited to chat. Obviously, we share so much when it comes to the type of work that we do. And I'm just so excited to get to chat with you today. And I would love to start by helping my audience get to know you a little bit more. We heard all of your beautiful accolades as a professional, but personally, would just love to know a little bit more about you. What drew you to becoming a therapist, to specializing in trauma-informed care? Any fun facts about you?
Well, as a person, I kind of like to joke of I'm literally just a girl.
Yeah.
Just a human like everybody else. Which I think helps with some of the relatability that I like to approach my work with. But in terms of what drew me to becoming a therapist, I had always been interested in psychology and what makes somebody different from somebody else, especially if a lot of other circumstances were similar. I was exposed to mental illness at a young age. And so I actually went into school with the intention of becoming a psychiatrist. I was pre-med.
Oh, wow.
And when I got to college, I essentially had to choose whether I wanted to study abroad or finish my lab courses. And I chose studying abroad. So I clearly wasn't that devoted to the path.
Yes.
But then I started exploring other avenues and found the more kind of direct client care, more long-term, less medical model-based work through psychotherapy. And that actually aligns with me as a person way more. So I'm really happy that I found myself in that path.
Yeah.
In terms of the trauma-informed care, that's almost kind of like a combination of my own experience in therapy and my own personal growth. And of course, what I was seeing with my clients. I felt like a lot of people were getting stuck on just focusing on the symptom level. And I realized that there was so much underneath that needed to be processed in order to actually be able to make headway on what people are struggling with in the present.
Mm-hmm.
So then I sought out more training. I did my own work because I found myself getting stuck in my own work. And then once I got to really digging in there, that was when things started breaking through for me, and also saw the same thing for my clients.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And very, very similar journey. I mean, I think if that many people might know or might not realize is that for so many therapists, we are drawn to this work because we have experienced, things, traumas to varying degrees. And of course, that so much of it is in becoming therapists and doing this own work that ourselves, right? You have to do it and understand what it's like to be the client before you can really have such a meaningful impact as a therapist. So it's quite a journey. And I feel you.
Absolutely.
Yeah. That. And I'm so curious, thinking about your journey. What were when you think back, and I'm really kind of sitting and thinking about this as before we hopped on, we were talking about, I was just finishing up my book. And a lot of it, there was a lot of pieces of my story in there. So I've been very present with the early parts of my work, which I hadn't revisited in a while. But I'm really curious for you, what was hard about the work at first? Or what felt if you remember that early version of yourself stepping into it, I wonder how was that for you?
The therapeutic work?
Yeah.
Yeah. You mean my personal therapeutic work?
Yeah.
Okay.
You feel
just making
comfortable.
sure I was, totally. I was just making sure I was fully understanding. The hardest part of it for me was that there were moments that my own therapist was able to almost kind of see these things that were contributing to the anxiety that I was experiencing in the present, but I wasn't ready to go there.
Mm-hmm.
So a lot of the
Yeah.
challenges were my own defensive structures, in the sense of like, I had this model of the world, I had this model of people in my life that I wasn't ready to fully dismantle yet. And so if you're listening to this and you're in your own therapy and you're noticing yourself kind of maybe getting stuck and you aren't fully ready to maybe address some of the things that might be contributing to that stuckness, that doesn't mean that you're going to not be ready forever. Because I was starting to hit these walls. I had, like I said, my own defensive structures. And then later on, as I grew up a bit, I started therapy when I think I was like 21 when I
Mm-hmm.
started. Years later, I was able to revisit these things.
Yeah.
So it's emotional work. And I think that's the hard part of it. You might go in wanting that quick fix or that magic bullet to be like, I want this feeling to go away. But sometimes it can be hard to realize that you need to do the work and you need to sit in the pain in order
Yeah.
to actually get the outcome that you want.
Hmm. I know it's so hard. And that is probably the biggest, like, what, like, mind blowing thing that happens when you step into it is like, yes, I want to feel better. And it's so hard when it's like, ooh, but in feeling better, I do have to sit with so much discomfort and so much pain present.
And that's why a lot of people say therapy can feel worse before it feels better, because you're opening up all of these things that you've neatly stored away. But the way
Right.
that you've neatly stored them away is often what's causing a lot of your
Yeah.
pain in the present.
So true. And I'm so curious what, and this can be based on your own personal experience or the experiences that you see often with clients. What are some common defenses that people are holding up that might be blocking them from fully leaning in and feeling all of the pain that of course you've learned to protect for so long? What do those defenses tend to look like and feel like?
How much time do we have? I'll share the most common ones that I encounter,
Hmm.
both even just through my own work and also through other people's, just being on the other side of the couch as the therapist of
Hmm.
a lot of other people. One of the biggest ones is intellectualizing. You want to understand every single thing. You want to play detective. You want to analyze, but you don't want to feel. As soon as it comes to feeling, it's like, nope, I'm not going there.
Mm-mm. Yep.
Second one is strong emphasis on control and wanting, this is more kind of like an externalized defense of not being able to accept what's out of your control because it makes you feel incredibly powerless, and powerlessness might be a really triggering, painful feeling for you. I see a lot of people, especially with like the high functioning anxiety population that I work with, coming in a lot of distress around what they can't control
Yeah.
and kind of wanting to be like, help me regain control.
Hmm.
Paradoxically, the way to regain control is by controlling your internal landscape and accepting that you can't control everything in your external one.
Hmm. Right.
And then another one that I often see is idealization of maybe some people who really
Mm.
harmed you,
Sure. Hmm. Yeah.
especially when it comes to maybe some family dynamics or family systems that weren't actually as supportive as
Mhm.
we may think that they
Yeah.
were, or maybe had a little bit more of a negative impact
Hmm.
than we
So
may be
true.
willing to admit.
Yeah. And tell us about the function of the idealization.
The function of the idealization is, because if you think about it, a child has no choice. And I'm going to talk about this specifically for family systems. There can also be a lot of idealization of a partner who is really
Sure.
harmful. Or
Totally.
even if you're in a current relationship, you might
Yeah.
idealize your partner. But in this case, specifically for family systems, we can say primary caregivers, we can say parents.
Hmm.
A child has no choice but to be in their family system. You can't pack your bags at 12, 13 years old
Yeah.
and get a job and pay your rent. You can't
Right. Right.
sign a lease.
Yeah.
So
Right.
there's a saying, I say this kind of like fully secularly, but I think it really resonates of, we'd prefer to believe that we're sinners in a world ruled by God than to admit that we live in a world ruled by the devil.
Whew. Yep. That hits very deeply. Yeah.
Because you have no choice, you have no
Yeah.
escape.
Right. Right.
So
Yeah.
that's the function of idealization.
It's so true. And this is, I know, one of the topics in working with a similar population that I know we have to approach like so gently, so kindly and compassionately to first and foremost say, we understand, right? Because I have so many clients that'll come in. My parents were amazing. They were great. They gave me everything. Like they did everything that they could. Like they did all of this. And then, of course, as we unpack, which inevitably happens, right, we understand some of the ways in which, to varying degrees, they couldn't be attuned, right? Attuned to you emotionally or really give you that safe feeling. And so you've learned that I have to idealize them. I have to be grateful and I don't get to feel mad at them.
Exactly.
When you start to see that, that I'm not the bad one, right? Actually, I was set up and brought up inside of a circumstance where I wasn't given the modeling and permission to feel my whole internal experience, which
exactly.
is
And I want
a
to
lot.
add that it's not to like villainize parents or villainize caregivers. And I hear a lot of people say, well, my parents weren't all bad, so this must not be true. Or I don't want to just come into therapy and like, pardon my French, shit on my parents.
Exactly. Right.
But that's not what's happening.
Totally.
And as clinicians, we understand that there is also a lot of good that probably came with it, that people 99.9% of the time don't actively want to harm their children. And there are some ways in which what you've internalized from your family system is hurting you today.
Yeah, exactly. And which is, again, such a big, important realization that is so hard for so many to sit with, because that's like your first moment of discomfort of like, whoa, you're challenging my entire worldview that I've held. And it protected me for so long. And so it can feel really destabilizing when you begin to have these conversations. And of course, we want to approach them with care and nuance and both. And right, we can have love and we can have anger and sadness and grief all at the same time, right? It is not all good or bad, black or white. We have to hold space for all of it, for sure. So with high functioning anxiety, first of all, can you talk us through like just what is high functioning anxiety? I know it's a term that we use a lot, and can we just explain it a little bit for some who might not understand what that fully means?
High functioning anxiety looks like the people who have it all together on the outside, but feel an immense amount of pressure and stress and pain on the inside. They might look like I said, they have it all together. They might be the ones who are the good friends, the good workers, the good girls, if you will, kind of nod to your podcast name.
Totally. Yep.
And who are juggling all these things, because people with high functioning anxiety often have learned to tie their worth to their external achievements, whether that be actual tangible achievements or meeting what they perceive to be excellent in terms of, again, friend, partner, employee, child, etc.
Right.
And so when I say high functioning anxiety, it's because they're doing so much and they get rewarded. High functioning anxiety often gets rewarded because you are you're exceeding expectations. But again, inside, you are pretty much at your breaking point. You can't sleep. Your appetite might be messed up. You feel like you're on the brink of a breakdown and you don't really have very much bandwidth for yourself, and you find yourself in a little bit of like an anxious, burnt out cycle.
Yep. And so if anybody's like nodding their head along to this of, whoa, that is me, that is my experience, what do they do with that? Again, knowing that many high functioning anxiety women especially are the doers, right? Like we're going to take action and fix, manage, control and figure out how do we fix this? And so walk us through the next step.
Well, the first thing that I want to tell you, if you're someone listening with high functioning anxiety, is that working on your high functioning anxiety does not mean that you are going to fail at everything that you try to do from here on out. I often hear people who, because again, it gets rewarded, who don't want to let this go because they're like, oh, so you mean I should just drop all these balls? And it's not it. It's instead that you can be okay with good enough. And that you can be okay with not managing everybody's emotions around you because you're prioritizing yourself a little bit more again. So the first thing, I guess, to do is to take stock of these different areas of your life and to notice which ones are draining you the most. Where are you giving more energy than is actually aligned with what you truly value and not what everybody else values, not what you think your boss values, not what you think your family or your partner wants from you, but what you want from you, and identify that misalignment.
Can you give us a real life example of that, of like a situation where that might come up?
So let's say that you are I'll take the work example because I think that's probably
Yeah.
one of the most common ones.
Relatable. Yeah.
We're in a society where good work gets rewarded with a request for more good work, not
Yeah.
a day off or anything.
Right.
So let's say that you have set these expectations, or let me, I guess, rephrase here, that you have done such good work that everybody around you is going to expect that you're going to be the one who takes the lead on all the projects, that you're going to be the one who is crossing the T's, dotting the I's on everything, and you're the one who's going to overextend yourself. And so you find yourself in a little bit of a cycle where people are expecting that from you because you've kind of like taken it, you've started with it, and now you've taken it on yourself. Everybody else is expecting this from you, and now it's compounding and you're expecting that more from yourself too.
Right.
When I say identify what you value, how much time are you putting into work compared to maybe your relationship, your friendships, your self-care? And are you okay? No, you might not be okay with giving good enough, but can you allow yourself to start balancing those values a little bit more? Can you allow yourself to maybe instead of taking the lead on this work project, allowing somebody else to take the lead,
Right.
knowing that it will be uncomfortable? But instead of taking that lead, maybe instead you can go to a therapy appointment, or maybe
Right.
instead you can go get a massage or a manicure or pedicure or go on a date or get drinks with your friends. And know
Totally.
that it will be uncomfortable, but be
Yeah.
okay with that uncomfortable.
Totally. What would you say is inside of that uncomfortable? Like, what's the fear? What's the worst case scenario likely playing out?
The fear is that if I'm not the one who is taking the lead, other people will be disappointed in me. Things won't go well. That kind of goes back to that piece of control. Like, I need to have
Oh, yeah.
total control, otherwise things will collapse. And some people have, like I said at the beginning, this attachment to their worth with their
Yeah,
external achievements.
for sure.
So there might be this piece of, if I'm not the one getting the validation and the like good job for doing this, I'm not getting my fuel for my self-worth.
Right. Totally.
So that discomfort is
Right.
in
And
that.
I'm afraid that if I don't do it, then they'll fire me, right? Or
Yeah.
it'll all go away. Which is
Yes,
one I hear so often. This, if it's not me, if I'm not giving 150%, then I'm not going to have the safety of this job. And I'm so curious right there, which is what I know you do so well, I think is the intersection of the trauma and the high functioning anxiety. Yeah. And I wonder if you could speak a little more
exactly.
to that
A
too.
lot of the times, these ways that the high functioning anxiety is how you might be coping
Mhm.
with negative beliefs about yourself and painful experiences that did teach you that if you're not giving 150%, that you're going to lose what you have, that you do need to tie your worth to your achievements, that you can't depend on other people, so you need to be the one to do everything, that you need to be perfect, otherwise you're going to get punished, otherwise you're going to lose your
Yeah.
relationships, that when you prioritize yourself, that that's dangerous in
Right.
any way, shape, or form.
Yeah.
You weren't born thinking this way or feeling this way or behaving this way. You learned it and it got reinforced.
Yeah.
And then that's what started to feel safe.
Right. Right.
So we can teach you all the behavioral and cognitive skills to start addressing it in the present. And that can help for some people. For some people, that is all they need. But for a lot of people, and this was the case for me and my own work, it wasn't enough. I was doing everything right. I was going through the motions, but I still felt that deep discomfort of my worth is tied to this.
Mhm. Totally, totally. And for you, and I imagine, I'm going to first preface this with, I imagine this is something that you probably still grapple with, as it is something, right? I know I still grapple with. But how have you learned to support yourself through that when that comes up, right? If I'm not doing this perfectly, if I'm not achieving, to the nth degree, then somehow I'm failing or I'm
Yeah.
not worthy. Yeah. What do you tend to do?
I will say doing my own therapy has dramatically helped me with this to the point where I call myself a recovering perfectionist because
Hmm.
I
Yep.
have kind of done the work to be okay with good enough and to
Hmm.
not tie my worth to conditions.
Right.
And
Right.
so a big part of that was learning, where did I learn that this is the case?
Right. Exactly.
and let me process these experiences and develop a little bit more of like an adaptive belief system.
Right.
Unlearning that my worth is tied to these external achievements, but then turning it into practice. Sending the email before I've reread it 500 times,
Yes.
not taking on the additional project, letting myself take a breather,
Right.
and really starting to internalize that things aren't black and white, that just because I'm not overextending myself doesn't mean that my life is going to fall apart.
Yeah.
You have to give yourself an opportunity to integrate and internalize that things will be okay if you don't do what you have been conditioned to do.
Yeah, right. So right there is such a beautiful example of you were literally like retraining your nervous system to have to go through the motions of I did good enough, I didn't overextend myself, and everything is still okay, right? Everything is still standing, you're still connected, you're still successful. All of it is still working. And that really is the most uncomfortable thing of having to literally go through the motions and notice, okay, I'm uncomfortable, but just because I'm uncomfortable doesn't mean it's wrong.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And I want to emphasize again, a lot of people are like, but I don't want to drop these balls. Like, I won't be successful if I don't do these things. And that's not the
Right.
case. It's instead that you're finding out what your definition of successful is, not what everybody else's around you's definition is.
Right. Absolutely. And if we go back to, probably work examples or just power dynamics too,
Yeah.
especially at work, boss, employee tends to always replay our earliest attachment or child wounds
100%.
because there was, right, quite the power dynamic at play when you were younger. In work settings especially, it is going to be so much harder to confront it, to set your boundary, to do the thing that feels right to you, even if the person in power might disagree or might be upset or might be uncomfortable. And so it really takes so much courage and strength to show up authentically and to put your needs out there, even at the risk of this person in power being upset.
And one thing that I've found in my work and in working with a lot of people navigating this is that unless you are working in a toxic environment, because you are overextending yourself, 95% of the time, the person in power does not get upset
Yeah.
and is
Mm-hmm.
okay with
Sure.
you delegating a little bit more or having somebody
Right.
else on your team step in.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
A
It's a very good
lot
point.
of it, some of it is absolutely valid and justified and absolutely happening. And there are times in which you are working with a toxic boss with high expectations or in a toxic work environment, and it is feeling really catastrophic, and you are getting punished when you do take a bit of a step back. That is a different situation. A lot of the times with this high functioning anxiety, it can be self imposed.
Right. Right. So true. And so important to understand that, right? To understand, oh, this is what's playing out. That this is actually all of the systems and the patterns that you have learned to feel safe, and perhaps not necessarily the expectations being put on you
Yeah.
by someone in power, which is again so important. And I'm actually so curious too, if we could talk about shame for a second, because
Yes.
I know shame, especially if we start to talk about complex PTSD, which we can talk a little bit about what that is and how that again is connected here. But we'll start with shame and how that plays a role in that kind of this self-imposed nature that tends to happen here, just like you discussed.
Yeah. This shame piece ties back to the self worth piece because the words of shame are I'm a bad person and I'm not a worthy person. And so let me cope with my feelings of shame by trying to prove that I am a good person, that I am good, that I
Yeah.
am worthy.
Mhm.
And let me show this externally rather than believing it and internalizing it
Internally.
internally.
Right, right. And how does that thread back to, let's say, your inner child? What did your inner child perhaps not receive to
Your inner child probably did not receive very much love, unconditional love, specifically acceptance, nurturance, guidance,
yeah.
protection.
Yeah, which I think is so important, right? To go back there and see that, to understand that like this feeling that I am bad, I am not good enough, I am not worthy is not inherently you, right? It's not your personality,
No.
it's not who you are. It's just right, you were missing the mirror, the mirror of unconditional love that you need at this really young early age my son, who's 3.5, actually just walked in here before we got to meet him. And what I see, and like just to see it as a parent, especially at this age where like this is where the foundation of self is made, and to see how he repeats what we say, right? Of I'm proud, right? I am strong. I was so brave. If nobody's saying that to you, right, then like you have no words to repeat it, right? You have no understanding of this is me. It's our job to help mirror and create that healthy sense of self and self-worth. And of course, in many generations, previously, but very few, I think, were modeled that. And so I think it has led to so many of us growing up with really a challenging relationship to our own self-worth.
Children need nurturance.
Mm-hmm.
They
Absolutely.
need to be praised. They need to
Mm-hmm.
be attuned to. They need to be taught that they are worthy just because they exist.
Yeah. And I want like everybody to sit with that for a second, right? Even applying it to yourself, thinking of like a photo of you as a child, like looking at her and being able to tell her, right, you are worthy just because you exist. You don't have to work hard. You don't have to do more to be worthy. And so we can see right there, right, is the direct line to high functioning anxiety in adulthood.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And I wonder if you can tell us, because you've written this amazing book on CPTSD and exercises on how to start to work through that. I wonder if you could tell us a little bit, remind us about what CPTSD is, and maybe talk a little bit about the book and kind of all that you included in it. I don't have a copy with me. I meant to bring it with, but it is such, I mean this 1,000%, this is such an incredible resource that I am already recommending to clients to use, because again, with this, it's so grounding to have something like your book just to be validated, right? To be mirrored in that this is what you're experiencing. It's not you, but then have the framework of, okay, this is how we start to work with it. And I think it's just a beautiful compliment to anybody who's doing active therapy work too, to kind of really work on in between sessions, or if you haven't stepped into therapy yet, to start having a relationship to this material yourself.
Yeah. With that, got my copy right here.
Beautiful. There it is. Yes. Oh, so nice.
But for those who don't know, complex PTSD is different from standard, I guess, PTSD in that it is repeated trauma that is difficult to escape. And it doesn't necessarily have the life-threatening component that standard PTSD requires per the DSM. So this can look like emotional neglect, constant emotional misattunement. It can be anything from being born prematurely to being separated from your parents to growing up in the foster system to sexual trauma. A lot of women experience sexual trauma, abusive relationships, bullying. It can be things from chronic illness, exposure to maybe like high conflict areas as well. Any of that repetitive trauma with difficulty escaping. And so we internalize a lot of beliefs about ourselves, about others, about the world when we're facing this complex trauma, because we need to kind of shift our frame in order to survive it. So kind of like I said at the beginning, if you have emotionally neglectful parents or parents who aren't providing that attunement, you will start to put it back on yourself, because it's safer to believe that there's something wrong with you than it is to believe that the people who you depend on for your life might be limited in what they can give you.
Yeah.
And so complex trauma also affects the nervous system, because you're in this constant state of chronic stress that can completely dysregulate your responses. So in adulthood, that might look like getting an email from your boss and again, feeling like you're being chased by a tiger, or it can bring you right back to feeling like your approval is on the line. And again, when you need approval for survival in childhood, it genuinely feels catastrophic to the nervous system. So even though the traumatic events that result in complex PTSD might not be these life-threatening events, instead of type 1 traumas, we call these type 2 traumas, they are way more recurrent, and the impact can actually be more intense because it influences your sense of self. A lot of people with complex PTSD don't always have a distinct sense of self that existed before the trauma, because oftentimes they grew up in the trauma.
Right. Right.
Whereas for people with a single incident trauma, there's life before the trauma and life after the trauma. For a lot of people with complex PTSD, there is no life before
Right.
the trauma.
So it's such an important, I think, word to put to this lived experience of this chronic, repetitive exposure to again an environment, circumstances where your needs were not attuned to, met, and how that literally impacts the way that you function, right? Literally
Yeah.
the way you move about and experience the world. Like, what a significant impact this has.
It can affect your body. You can have GI issues. You can have
Yeah.
somatic symptoms, psychological symptoms like those beliefs about yourself, negative
Mhm.
mood can
Yeah.
affect your relationships, and that you might fear
Yeah.
relationships or you might pursue unhealthy ones. You might find yourself in toxic work relationships, even down to toxic romantic ones.
Mm-hmm.
It really has pervasive
Yeah.
effects. And a lot of
Effects.
people don't even know that they have complex trauma because, again, it's rooted in these type 2 traumas.
Right. Right. It's all you've ever known, right? So
Yeah.
it's not a glaring, this was trauma. It's only when you start to do this work that you begin to see it. And I'm so curious, can you give us a few examples of some of the exercises in the book, or, something where you might direct someone, this is a nice place to start or to begin to explore what it means? Again, knowing that obviously this is really heavy material to
Yeah.
step into looking at and working with. So I'm just curious, kind of, or if there's any exercises that have stood out to people, or, just, yeah, wondering if
Yeah.
you'd like to share.
So there are more than 50 exercises. I think there are 60 in here.
Amazing.
And so instead of maybe pinpointing specific exercises because different things resonate with different people, I kind of want to highlight that it starts with safety and stability. The first thing to make sure before you do any type of trauma work is making sure that you are grounded and as regulated as possible, because opening up these boxes that you've worked so hard again to stack neatly on your psychological shelf can be a little destabilizing. So it starts with a ton of tools to really strengthen what we call your window of tolerance, your ability to sit with that discomfort, because trauma work inherently is uncomfortable. We have one, I'll give some specific exercises here. We have one that's like building your grounding toolkit, where I literally encourage you to get like a toiletry bag and then put things in it like an ice roller or like one of those
Yes.
ice packs that you can shake, or some
Mm-hmm.
lemon candy, things to just
Mm-hmm.
regulate.
Yes.
Then we move on to reconnecting with your body. A lot of people with complex trauma have dissociated from their emotional, physical, cognitive experiences, that we really need to help people reconnect with what their bodies and emotions are trying to tell them. And the body can often feel like a dangerous place. So we do that in a really graduated way. There's an exercise in there that's helping you connect to an area of like slight discomfort in the body, and then pendulate. We call pendulate back down to an area of neutrality, or maybe like a pleasant
Mm.
sensation in the body,
Sure.
to teach you how to move back and forth,
Yeah.
and to essentially teach you that you have control over
Mm-hmm.
sitting with your discomfort
Mm.
or not
Mm-hmm.
sitting with it.
Yeah.
Then we move into some trauma processing exercises. Obviously, only do this if you have the bandwidth for it. I recommend using them with a therapist, but therapy is not always accessible to everybody. So the hope is that this can be a great place to start. And this is where you really learn to get insight and strengthen your awareness into how these events have resulted in the worldview that you have today. And once you really start to sit with that and to feel the feelings around it, is when you can start to let it go.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
The later chapters are to help you reconnect with yourself, rebuild self
Mm-hmm.
esteem, work through that shame. And then lastly, to rebuild your relationships.
Mm-hmm.
Because since relationships feel so dangerous with complex
Yes.
PTSD, we
Yep.
really want to work on helping you feel safe in relationship
Yeah.
to other people again.
Such a beautiful scaffolding that really, I think, is the the right steps to build safety, to build tolerance, to build that grounding, to interact obviously with yourself first, internal first, and then we bring it external, which I think is again the most powerful, important route, because naturally, right, when the trauma happens relationally, it's going to have to be addressed relationally, right, and healed
Relationally, yes.
relationally.
Yes. There's only so far that you will go if you only do this within yourself,
Yeah.
especially if the harm was caused by others.
Right. Exactly. Exactly. It's a lot. And
Yeah.
I'm going to be so excited to share the link to this book. I highly encourage everybody to order a copy, to grab it, because it's just, again, such an excellent resource. I'm curious too, you shared before we started that you're getting married in a few months.
Yes, I am.
And to bring it back a little, tell us how are you navigating high functioning anxiety and recovering perfectionism as you move towards your wedding day?
There's nothing better than a little bit of exposure therapy in your recovering perfectionism when you are navigating a wedding, a book launch, being a
Yes.
therapist, and
Oh my
moving
gosh.
in a month.
Uh-huh.
So everything right now has to be just good enough.
Good enough. Yep.
But I joke about this because the high functioning anxiety content that I post and everything that I talk about obviously comes also from personal
Of course. Yep.
experience. But
Totally.
part of the recovery from that looks like being able to let things be good enough without attributing them to who you are as a person.
Totally. And I'm so curious too. I imagine, again, in all of these like huge, significant life events happening within months of each other, which is wild. I imagine you've had to ask for help a lot.
Yes.
And how has that been for you? And probably, I know that there's a hyper independent part in there. Yeah. How has that been to have to release some control, ask for help?
It is challenging. I understand the difficulty with delegating things and having that belief of "Well, people can't do it as well as I can, so I'm just going to
Yep.
do it all
Right.
myself."
Yep. Totally.
And that's where that good enough piece
Yeah.
comes in. There is validity to people potentially not caring as much about your babies, like your wedding, your business, your book, whatever
Yes.
you're doing,
Totally.
than you. And can you be okay with that?
Right.
Having help is the only way that I've been able to juggle all of the things that
Yeah.
I've been juggling.
Absolutely. Yep. So true. There's no other way.
Yeah,
Right? You
there's no
have
other
to
way.
bring it in. And this is something that I did when I was going through the whole wedding process. One thing that like would help ground me was, okay, how do I want to feel? Like, how do I want to feel on and throughout the
Yeah.
wedding day? Like, what is that? And then literally like focusing, planning around that, right? Letting like anything that didn't contribute to me feeling how I wanted to feel on the wedding day, I would start to be like, okay, then that's not going to be something we're going to spend a whole lot of time and space on. And so I'm curious
Yeah.
for you, how do you want to feel on that
Yes,
day?
I want to feel present. And I
Yeah.
want to feel light and happy. And when I'm there, I know I am not going to give one single shit. Sorry again.
Yeah, no, it's welcome.
About the color of the linens or if the flowers are in the right place or the tiny little details. What's going to matter is that all of the people that you love are in one place that one day and that you are getting married to the person that you love.
Yeah.
A piece of advice that I was given was your wedding does not make your marriage.
Yeah.
And that's what I'm grounding myself in too, because at the end of the day, it's more about the relationships that you formed
Yeah.
than anything else.
Absolutely. So true. So true. Ugh.
And just one quick thing for my brides out there who are hyper fixating on all of the external stuff. Notice if you are taking the external stuff as a reflection of you. Because what's more a reflection of you is the relationships that you've formed and the people who will be there to celebrate you, not your flowers or your linens or anything like that.
Yeah. Oh, it's so true. It's so true. And I'm sure we could have a whole other podcast series on how relationships show up in your wedding planning because it forces you to have to look at every single relationship in your life.
Yes.
And that was a particularly stressful one for me, but we could save that for another time because I'm sure we could go on and on about it.
Yeah.
But I'm so curious, what do you hope that anyone who is grappling with high functioning anxiety or is really identifying with CPTSD, like what is your hope for their takeaway today?
Your high functioning anxiety and your beliefs about yourself that are stemming as a result of your trauma are learned, and anything that was learned can be unlearned. You are not bound to the weight of the pain that you are experiencing.
Yeah, beautifully put. And so true. So true. And such a reminder truly that needs to be heard, right? Needs to be taken in. So I hope everybody can really take that in deeply today and let it be true for you.
And one thing to add to that, if you have high functioning anxiety, letting yourself turn the dial down a little bit does not mean that you are letting everything drop, and it does not mean that you are going to fail.
Yeah, so true.
Release a little bit of the pressure. You're still safe.
Right. Ugh, so important. So important. Debbie, thank you so much. This is, I know, going to be such important, resonant information for so many good girls listening today. And please remind everybody where they can find you and what you're offering at this moment.
Yes, you can find me on Instagram and TikTok at Therapy Debbie. I post a lot of high functioning anxiety and complex trauma content. If you're in New York and you are looking to start therapy, you can find me and my team at manhattanpsychotherapy.co. And then if you want to do a little bit of some self-guided work and you want to explore maybe how your past is influencing your present, you can get my book, Self-Directed Complex PTSD Exercises for Women, on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, Target, Walmart, lots of different places.
So good. Awesome. And we will link that all in the show notes so that you can have that and easily find Debbie there. So
amazing.
Thank you so much for being here. So grateful
Thank you so much
to have
for having
you
me.
And your expertise. So wonderful. And we would love to have you back again.
Would love. Thank you, Megan.
Thank you. Thank you so much for listening to another episode of Good Girls Gotta Heal. I am so grateful to have you in this community. Be sure to subscribe, rate, and review. That helps us out greatly. And we'll see you next time.